Good evening. I'm John Baer. I'm Vice President of the Foundation here. And on behalf of Arthur and Angie and all of our board members, it's my pleasure to welcome you to our first Speaker Series event of 2017. Tonight's program is special because it's all about values. In particular, it's about the values of the men and women who lead our all-voluntary military missions around the world, and the values of so many people here in the States working to unlock the potential within those veterans when they return here at home. Those of you that know the Blank family of businesses know that we lead with our values, whether it's the Atlanta Falcons, Atlanta United, PGA Tour Superstore, or the ranch in Montana. All of our associates live out the same core values. We put people first, we listen and respond, we include everyone, we lead by example, we innovate continuously, and we give back to others. And you'll see those core values on all of the things that we produce. The two programs you will hear about tonight, Heroes and Horses and Outward Bound for Veterans, also lead with their values. And you'll hear about how those programs are helping veterans change their lives. And the stories are really extraordinary. But what's even more impressive is how Heroes and Horses and Outward Bound for Veterans are helping the rest of us change. So through their innovative approaches, both organizations require us to confront our assumptions about what it means to be a veteran returning to the States. So from news reports, it's easy to believe that these men and women may be sick or broken or that we need to help fix them. In fact, Heroes and Horses and Outward Bound for Veterans take the opposite approach. They know that these men and women have been top performers in their field, fulfilling complicated duties under stress that most of us will never know. They carry inside them great potential for leadership in public sector roles and in the private sector. So to tap into this potential, we are the ones that need to change. We set aside our assumptions about what's wrong, and we learn to create conditions where these men and women can thrive. And when we do that, we go beyond expressing appreciation for their service, and it's how we share in the burden of the service. So your program includes bios of all the speakers, Micah Fink, Jeremy Svietzer, Chad Spangler, Brendan O'Byrne, and Steve Cannon, who Arthur recognized earlier, CEO of A&B Group. I encourage you to study the bios closely in the program. Each one is impressive enough as an individual to lead the whole program tonight, and we're blessed to have all of them with us at once. A couple of quick thank yous. Some of the young people that you saw here tonight helping to staff the program are part of our American Explorers program, which is tapping into the potential of high school students on Atlanta's west side. That's another values-based program, so a hand for the American Explorers folks. And before I turn the microphone over to Micah, I want to share some good news from the foundation. Today, we're announcing new grants to support both Heroes and Horses and Outward Bound for Veterans. For Heroes and Horses, the associates who run the ranch in Montana have approved a 2-year, $60,000 grant to help Micah strengthen the organization. And those of you that know grant making behind the scenes, there have been furious negotiations about the most minute details of this grant, but it's all in place now. Those of you who also know nonprofits may know the line about startup nonprofits, that the founder is sprinting toward a cliff, believing someone will build a bridge before they get to the edge. And Micah is sprinting as fast as he can toward the edge of that cliff. And this grant is to help him build that bridge. And we're excited to be part of a team that's building that capacity. In addition to the grant, the staff at the ranch have worked out an arrangement to donate space at the ranch to help Micah stage and deliver the program during the summer. It's a very personal relationship for the ranch associates, and we're excited to be part of the team. So for Outward Bound, as Arthur said, he's been part of Outward Bound for a long time. This is the first time that he's made a grant specifically devoted for Outward Bound for veterans. The grant is $150,000 over 3 years and would help Outward Bound make a big leap. moved to serving about 500 vets a year, up from what this year is about 250. In the normal cycles of funding, these numbers go up and down, and this grant is a challenge to raise and sustain the numbers. It's part of a much larger investment of $1.5 million that Arthur and Angie have just approved to support outward bound schools around the country. We're grateful for Chad and everybody with the outward bound team that we can be part of this. So the last thing I want to say about the grants is that they're not sweetheart deals. These guys and women have to do a lot of work to get the money. They have to work smarter. They have to attract new investors. They have to find a way to make 1 + 1 equal a really big number. What we're excited about is that these programs lead with their values, and we are certain that if they continue to lead with their values, they will exceed our expectations. So thanks to both programs. And I'm going to turn it over to Micah.
Thanks, John. Arthur, Angela, thank you. The foundation and Mountain Sky Guest Ranch has been really a critical component to what we're doing at Heroes and Horses, which is really innovating something new. And I'm going to talk about that tonight, about the program. But before I do that, I'm going to introduce a little short clip to a film that we're doing right now, and it's called 500 Miles Project. The project is about telling the story of the unpurposed human being and the unpurposed horse, and how those two stories actually parallel each other, and how it's purpose that will ultimately enable you to overcome your external circumstances. So we did this with adopting 15 wild Mustangs off the BLM. I'm leaving on Tuesday to ride them with a team of veterans and guys that have graduated the program from New Mexico to Arizona. It's going to take about 5 weeks. And we just adopted them. We've been breaking ourselves. It's an incredible story. We're making a short film that's going to be 23 minutes long and will be featured in the Men's Journal as a 3,000-word feature. So here it is. This is from 2 days of filming. This is the 500 Miles Project trailer. This isn't a sad story about veterans who have been sent to combat and they're broken. This is a story about people and about what can happen if they make choices to learn about themselves. These horses are wild animals, and when they find their purpose, they'll use that to transform the lives of these veterans that they're going to meet up with.
What we're trying to do here is give these Mustangs a life, a new life, and a great life. You know, when you put some of the toughest human beings in the world with some of the toughest horses in the world together, and they're both curing each other of what they both need, I don't think there's anything better than that.
This project, 500 Miles, is about pressure and time. And we have to put these horses through that process so that we know what they're capable of. The only way we can do that is by covering country. You know, we'll find out at the end of 500 miles.
I like to do as much as I can without forcing them to do anything. It needs to be their free choice.
I think it's a great responsibility, not only to tell this story, but to give these horses a chance and to give these veterans a chance. Thanks. We're not done yet. We're leaving on Tuesday. It's an incredible undertaking, and it really ties into what we're trying to do with the veterans and Heroes and Horses. About 60,000 veterans nonprofits exist in North America. That accounts for around $7 billion a year of governmental and non-governmental money. And since 9/11, 110,000 veterans have killed themselves. That really tells me that it's not an economic issue, that it's a process issue. And the processes, a lot of them are failing these guys when they come home, myself included. I served 10 years as a Navy SEAL and then followed on that career for 4 years as a paramilitary guy, working in about every hotspot that there is facing our nation right now. And those experiences fundamentally changed my life. And that's okay. And I need to find out who I am post those experiences and use that knowledge to become a building block of growth in my life. So with all those nonprofits, I realized that there needed to be something else. We needed to find out what the world was doing and do completely the opposite, because what's being done wasn't functioning. So at Heroes and Horses, we kind of started breaking down what guys experience when they come home from combat. And I don't believe that combat makes you sick or gives you a disease. I think it fundamentally changes your life, whether you were in a car accident or you lost a child, that the processes are really the same. Pressure and time ties into what we do in the 3-phase program, which I'll get into just a little bit later, is that people really only change 2 ways. Really, an extreme amount of pressure in a short amount of time, like an IED blast, changes you from a solid to a gas, or a drop of water on a stone over 1,000 years. And I was talking to Steve today about that. We don't have 1,000 years. Pressure and time is what changed the environment, and from dust we came, and from dust we return. So therefore, those processes apply to us as human beings. And it's really fundamentally purpose that will allow you to overcome your external circumstance. And a lot of people say, oh, you know, what's purpose? Like, you know, maybe like getting a really good job, or, you know, being good in my family. Those are all great things. But I believe that purpose is fundamentally transcribed upon the hearts of each and every person and veteran that comes through this program. The hardest thing that we'll ever do is look in for answers. We are now keyed to look out for answers. We want to grab a book, we want to see what's on the internet, we want to ask somebody how to quantify our life experiences and tell us where we should be going so we can get to a place that somebody else thought up. So we take those principles and we tie them into veterans' help organizations. And so for me, the way that I can quantify success is through the individual identifying purpose in their life. And then number 3, it's struggle that actually gives things in life value. So the greater the struggle, the greater the value. And so anything that has any value is directly related to the amount of struggle that it's gone through, whether it's oil and gas coming out of the ground, or it's, you know, the Super Bowl, or it's going on the show naked and afraid, or running a marathon, right? It's all struggle and value. Except for when struggle comes to us, the first thing that we do is, you know, reach for the Lipitor, right? Instead of going to the gym and getting up early and having a healthy lifestyle, right? So we actually devalue people's experiences. So these guys are one choice away from becoming completely enriched from their combat experiences, that once we're breaking them down, actually can become key building blocks of growth in their life. And we're gathering the data to actually prove that. So people ask me, well, you're not a, as we say in the military, a head doctor, and you know, you're not a psychologist, and I don't want to be one. I don't like to sit down that long. But we're not claiming to be. We're not telling people how to think or what normal looks like or who they should be, and quantify their experiences and tell them to get to a place that I think is where they need to go. We put them through a process that fundamentally transforms their life in their own authentic way, identifying their own personal greatness. And so when I say it's biology, not psychology, we're not giving them a set of ideas to follow. We put them in a process that transforms their life. I heard it said one time, a guy was given an example. He said, inside the human body, you have 71 trillion cells. And inside each one of those cells is a code specific to you, exists nowhere else on the planet. So if I was to open up one of your cells and stretch it out, it'd be about 6 feet long. And inside that 6 feet, there's 3 billion characters. So if I was to read one character every second, it would take me 96 years to read the characters out of one of your cells. So if I was to stretch each one of those from end to end, it would go from here to the moon and back 178,000 times. Google it. So I see some blank stares there. Google it. So honestly, you're telling me that the answers that you're looking for are out here, and I'm here saying the answers that you're looking for, they're here. They're in your hearts. But the most difficult thing that you will ever do is look to that road that leads you to the authentic self. It's either to be somebody else or live their ideas. The most honest and pure choices, and sometimes they're not the ones that you think you want to make, are made under the most challenging situations. They are the ones that teach us about ourselves. There's guys that come through this program that are really broken because of what they've done, and there's guys that are broken because of what they didn't do, right? The pressure either creates extraordinary stories or absolutely just horrific examples of a person's actions. But when you get real with yourself in those type of intense situations and you really analyze the decisions that you made, you actually learn about yourself and grow forward. So the purity of choice is something that I really focus on in the Heroes and Horses program, and that is putting guys through a set of challenges and situations and circumstances that lead them down a road where ultimately they realize what they're looking for, they actually already had the whole time. They come to the program looking for answers from me or the other staff members, and they leave realizing this journey just led me straight back to myself. And that's why this program lasts, and that's why it's effective. So how we do it is it's a 3-phase program based on people change 2 ways through pressure and time. Phase 1 we call stress inoculation, which some of the people in our organization hate that, but that actually comes from the SEAL teams where they actually inoculate you to a stress that when the first time you put a dot on somebody, it's really not that big of a deal. You have been inoculated to such a high level that your heart rate's actually pretty normal and you're functioning and making decisions and not reacting. You're responding to those decisions. So we actually put guys through 5 days of horsemanship, wilderness pack training. They learn to connect with the horse and communicate and learn how to handle the animal. Then it's a 5-day pack trip, 7-day, pack trip into the backcountry. It's 5 days of wilderness survival school, and then another 5 days of training, which we call application. They come back, they begin to apply everything they learn in small groups and teams. And then it's an 11-day trip into the Beartooth mountain range, which is a very rugged wilderness just outside the Mountain Sky Guest Ranch. And then they're broken into groups of 2, and the last days they're on their own making their way out of the wilderness. And then phase 3, they go home, they get about 4 to 6 weeks at home, and then we send them to work for wilderness outfitters and cowboy outfits and ranch outfits across the United States, separating them away from Heroes and Horses, separating them away from veterans, and simulate them getting a job and getting out there. This program's, again, not about necessarily making cowboys and outfitters, though some guys do gravitate towards that direction. It's really about peeling back the layers to the original thought about themselves. So a lot of people ask me, what is success? Like, how do you know you're being successful? I think that the only way that we can quantify success is on the individual basis, because each person processes an experience different. I have a lot of guys I served with, across the range of special operations, and we could all go on one mission and every guy leaves with a completely different perspective. So I don't think we can generalize success, that we have to help that individual learn about who they are, identify that personal greatness, and they realize that a purpose is really how you live, and a job is what you do. And so they're not defined by that label, but they're defined about what they learned about themselves. So for us, it takes conviction to basically find out what the world's doing, become a good student of their processes, and then do completely the opposite and look for success. It takes conviction, and it takes innovation, and it takes a lot of hard work. But I always say, what would the landscape look like if we were all doing that? If we were all being our authentic selves? If each veteran that came through the program wasn't looking to me for answers, but looking to themselves? Well, through this process, that's what they find. And that's what Heroes and Horses is about, changing the landscape, changing the narrative that veterans are not victims, that combat doesn't destroy your life and make you sick, and can actually enrich your experience on Earth. So I'm Micah from Heroes and Horses. Thank you. I said a bunch of stuff in there. It really is an amazing program. We have Jeremy here tonight who's going to talk a little bit about his experience, and thank you for the opportunity. You don't need this. Do you need this? Hey, hold on, Good to see you.
Did a 15-month deployment to Afghanistan in the Korangal Valley with the 173rd Airborne Brigade. While we were there, we saw 1/5 of the combat in all of Afghanistan.
The thing about combat is that you have a small group of people who are completely interreliant on each other in a very difficult environment. And once you get used to being in a small group like that, where you really can count on everyone else's help and support in the worst kind of circumstances, once you get used to that, it's actually very hard to give it up. And a lot of soldiers actually miss the war that they were in. Not that they miss war, but they miss being in a small group where they feel so safely protected by their brothers and sisters. And what Outward Bound is able to do is, in some ways, recreate that environment, except in a non-combat setting.
What Outward Bound will do for veterans on these trips will provide them a place away from society to bond again, to be understood by people that have been through the same thing.
One of the great things about Outward Bound is that it takes vets and it puts them in some of the most rugged and beautiful parts of America, of that country that soldiers themselves understand that they're defending. Every vet, every returning soldier to this country should have the opportunity, if they want, to do a course like this, where they can not only share their experiences with other vets and return home a little bit reassured about who they are and their role in society, but also they get to enjoy this beautiful country that they've defended with their lives.
Absolutely. This place has been like, not to sound philosophical or anything, but it seems to be like a mirror to the soul.
I need that feeling of brotherhood again, you know, like we had in the Korangal, and it sucks when that's not there every single day. And now that it's back, like right away, seeing you guys.
The rest of your life is waiting for you.
Well, hello. My name is Chad Spangler. I am the National Director for Outward Bound Veterans. Before I start, I really just wanted to thank Arthur and the Blank Family Foundation for hosting us, especially John Bear and Laura Pritchett-Compton, who kept both Micah and I organized over the course of the last several months, which is no easy task. I'd also like to thank each and every one of you for being here today. I've had the good fortune to work for an organization that I care deeply about, for a group of people that I am passionate about working with, and I'm never not inspired when I see a group of people who take an interest in veterans, learning about their experience, and wanting to be part of a solution. So I'm really grateful for y'all for showing up and learning a little bit about Micah and his program and about Outward Bound Veterans. So I should start probably by asking, because audience participation is fun, right? I'm guessing most folks here have heard of Outward Bound, maybe not. Quick poll. Who's heard of Outward Bound? Hey, look at that, wow. Who's heard of Outward Bound Veterans? Oh, wow, about half, that's pretty good. For those that aren't familiar with Outward Bound, we are an organization who, I think some folks think of us as a wilderness organization. We are an educational organization first and foremost. Our mission is to change lives through challenge and discovery. Much what like Micah spoke about, you know, we use the wilderness and the activities as tools in a classroom. We don't really care if you learn how to climb. It's about what you can learn about yourself through that experience. It's important for us. We often talk about teaching through the wilderness, not for the wilderness, which basically means you're going to learn a lot about yourself by pushing yourself really hard. Currently, we have 11 chartered Outward Bound schools serving over 39,000 people across the country. A small portion of that is Outward Bound veterans. So why Outward Bound veterans? I think, we talk about our mission of changing lives through challenge and discovery, and I wouldn't be a very good Outward Bound guy if I didn't sort of try and challenge you a little bit. I think this is probably a pretty educated group in terms of the challenges that veterans face, but as someone who's worked in the veteran space at Outward Bound specifically since 2008, I fear sometimes that organizations that try very hard to help veterans raise money in a way that actually leads to damage. This is the part of the program where I would typically say 22 veterans a day commit suicide, or I would talk about post-traumatic stress, or I would talk about unemployment or substance abuse. I'm not going to do that. I think that organizations that take a strength-based approach to working with veterans, who don't treat them as victims, are the organizations that have the potential to make the most impact in veterans as a group. Micah obviously isn't, it's a pretty good example. He's not a victim. He's a really strong person who's driven. My experience with veterans is very much that way. So Outward Bound, we focus on challenge as kind of a tool. One of the ways in which we do that is really by reminding veterans of who they are. Veterans are a group of people who have been through basic training, or boot camp, or BUDS, or any variety of programs in which they've already demonstrated quite a bit of resilience. They've deployed, they've come home. They have survived that transition from deployed life, soldier, back to a family person, to husband, wife, sister, brother, parent. Regular Outward Bound courses, we talk about teaching skills. On Outward Bound veterans courses, we talk about reminding veterans. They have those skills. So as Micah sort of referred to earlier, the skills necessary to get a job as a civilian, to make a smooth transition from a veteran or from military to civilian life are the same skills you need to be successful in the military. Sometimes you just need to reorient yourself to the challenge in front of you. It's not necessarily a physical wall you're knocking down, but the skills are the same. So, I think speaking very, again, Micah stole a lot of my speech. No, just kidding. One of the things I really want to touch on is, this idea of therapy and therapeutic programs. Micah referenced very clearly and thoughtfully the idea that he's not a psychologist, and neither are we. And there's a reason for that. I think, in my experience with veterans, you think about it this way. There's a gentleman named Jake Wood who started a nonprofit organization. He talks about a friend of his who committed suicide. What he says that has really resonated with me since I've been working with veterans is what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan isn't what killed this gentleman named Clay Hunt. What killed Clay was what he lost when he came home. So what did Clay lose? He lost a sense of purpose. He lost his mission. He lost his sense of identity, and he lost his community. So I would challenge you all to think about who you are and how you identify yourself. And imagine having that taken away in one day. So I won't pretend that trauma isn't something that changes people and that it's not something that veterans struggle with. The numbers of people, veterans, diagnosed with post-traumatic stress who deployed to Iraq or in Afghanistan are between 40 and 60%, depending on the number you look at. Typically, in the civilian population, experience trauma less than 20% is typically diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. We, collectively, are taking a little bit of a one-size-fits-all approach to veterans. Maybe trauma isn't the thing. Maybe it is about who they are. And maybe it is about rediscovering that passion, that purpose, and that sense of identity. And how do we do that at Outward Bound? One One of the great things about wilderness is it doesn't care who you are, what your challenge is. It doesn't really care if you feel sorry for yourself. It just goes and it moves. Life is that way, right? It doesn't really matter. It's going to keep, the world's going to keep spinning. So on an expedition, we use sort of the expedition setting, which is an opportunity for people to reconnect with a group of veterans and re-experience a lot of the great strengths and really positive aspects of military service. We don't care about your challenge either. We're here to remind you of what you're still capable of accomplishing. And that's our focus. You know, you might have a TBI, you might have post-traumatic stress, you might be an amputee. We don't care because we believe that you're still capable of accomplishing great things in your life. And the wilderness setting really allows for us a perfect vehicle for us to do that. I love Micah's hashtag, the not a vacation. It's kind of one of my favorites. How does that look on an Outward Bound course? You know, we're really proud of the fact that we push veterans pretty hard to the point where several have, well, not several, hundreds probably, have come off of course saying that it was the most difficult thing they've ever done in their lives, including their military background. I think that's selective memory occasionally, to be honest, but we do push people pretty hard, and that's intentional. We want them to re-experience that sense of strength. We want them to experience, with a group of people, a purpose. Service can look a lot of ways. Veterans as a group of people, this generation of veterans specifically, has signed up for the military in a time of war, knowing that they were going to go and deploy to Iraq or Afghanistan more than likely. The vast majority of veterans are driven by the concept of service. And we use that concept to give veterans the opportunity to understand on expeditions. Service can mean a million different things. Service is your service to your country. Service is also serving the people in your crew that you're with. Cooking dinner for each other. Carrying weight for someone who is struggling or slow. Service can mean helping out in your community. Service can mean helping out in your family, doing dishes. Those are all ways to serve. And again, it's about looking at things in a little bit different way, in a little bit different light. A little bit about Outward Bound. I think I should probably give what we do. They're all 7-day wilderness programs. We serve between 200 and 600 veterans a year. We serve 6,000, close to 6,000, just over 6,000 veterans since 2008, all through fully funded programs. We don't think of these as a gift. We think of these as an opportunity. One thing I'm really fond of saying is what veterans don't need is another T-shirt. What they need is an opportunity. And we try very hard to make our expeditions an opportunity for them to sort of remind themselves of what they're capable of. So trying to close is hard. I think the one thing I would say, I think I'll close with just a brief story, kind of about one of my favorite veteran participants. You'll meet Brendan a little bit later. It's not him. A friend, a guy named Ryan Wire. Ryan was a Marine. He deployed to Fallujah. When I met Ryan, he was, well, when I met him on the phone, I guess, he was living in his truck in Spokane, Washington. Ryan had left the Marine Corps, unemployed, homeless, struggling, found out Outward Bound. I happened to be working in the field on the course that Ryan signed up on. He called from the airport because he didn't have enough money to check his bag. We were able to work that out with the airline, thankfully. Ryan shows up the following day, a bit lost, a little bit anxious. This is a 24-year-old man who had seen some incredibly difficult times in his life. Lost friends. And that clearly impacted him in his life. Ryan signed up for a sea kayaking course in Apostle Islands National Lakeshore, which is, if you've never been, Lake Superior. It's a pretty spectacular place, but it's cold. Surface water temperature when that group started was 46 degrees. Early June, first day rainy, foggy, horrible. As an organization, before we can take off, we really have to go through kind of some safety drills. What that means is wet exits, people getting out of boats, which means you get wet the first day, really within 5 minutes. Pretty miserable. Following day, we paddled from one island to the next, had some spare time, and Ryan, basically we kind of gave veterans the opportunity to take a hike or to stay in the water and do what we call practice a roll. So flip the boat over, do a little technique, and then you flip the boat back over. It's really quite a difficult technique to pull off. Ryan is the only person who decided staying in the water was a good idea. True to his Marine background, we spent close to an hour nearly drowning Ryan. Basically, we'd flip his boat over, he'd try and do the roll, his head would pop above the water, and then he'd go back under. We spent, like I said, a big hour and a half with Ryan in the water. He eventually got that roll. Ryan now is a father. He has a job, he has a home. I was fortunate enough to help him move into his new home several years ago. And he talks about that moment, that when he got that role that reminded him of who he was and gave him sort of a something to hang on to. And really that's what we want to give veterans. I think that's what Micah's organization does so well, and what we do well, is give veterans the opportunity to find that moment. So thank you. Thank you. Oh, I gotta go sit.
So thank you, Chad. Thank you, Micah. I'm Steve Cannon again. Now I'm going to ask our panelists to join us. We've got Jeremy, we've got Brendan. While you please step up to the stage. While they're getting up on the stage, I've seen a lot of veterans in the room. In fact, I want to ask the veterans that have served to stand up, please. I think we... I'm really proud that we live in a society where we're thanking our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines for their service. And I'm really grateful that I get to work for a company and for a man that goes beyond just thanking, but it's all about values in action. It's about putting those words into deeds and using platforms like this to shine a spotlight on incredible stories like those of Micah and of Chad and Jeremy, and to ultimately use the platforms like the NFL to say thank you and to give back and to honor those that have given so much. So without any further ado, let's get into a discussion. And I hope you can see we've got mics there for all of you. I'm going to get the discussion started, but I'm hoping if you all have questions, this is a participatory event, so let's do that. So, Brendan, you're in the hot seat. Let's start with you.
Let's start with me.
Explain how you go from the Korengal Valley in eastern Afghanistan to whitewater rafting on the Colorado. Just talk us through that transition a little bit, and then talk a little bit about the impact that Outward Bound has had on your life.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when I got home from the Korengal, I was the only guy out of my platoon that got out of the military immediately. I was actually stop lost, which means my ETS, my end of service date, was actually February of 2008. But since I was in the Korengal Valley, they're like, hey, you're going to serve out this deployment, and then we'll get rid of you at the end. So I got out after I got back in December of 2008. And to say I was lost is a little bit of an understatement. I drank for 6 months straight. I wasn't sober for 6 months. I mean, I didn't have a sober moment. And it wasn't the stuff I saw. I mean, we saw some bad stuff, there's no doubt about it, but I just didn't know how to, I had fallen into this role of being a sergeant in the Army, in the airborne infantry, and I was good at it, you know? I was really good at it. And I was good at what I did inside the Korengal Valley. I was a very trusted guy. I was, you know, top of the line. And, you know, fast forward, I'm out of the military now. I'm trying to look for a job. And I applied for a job at Walmart to clean floors in the middle of the night. And I got turned down for the job for whatever reason. And you got to understand what that does to a human being. It destroys something inside you, you know? So, you know, I'm trusted to lead men in combat, and now I'm not trusted to clean floors in the middle of the night. I would have done a damn good job, by the way.
Walmart,
So,
if you're listening.
you know, I'm going through everything I can. I'm drinking. I'm not drinking. I'm going to counseling. I'm not going to counseling. I'm trying everything I can to get my life back together. And so Chad gets a hold of me, and I can't even remember, 2009 or 2010? What
2010 maybe?
So yeah, and he's like, hey, I got this trip. You want to go on this trip? It's completely free. I'm like, you're going to try to convert me to something. I don't know what it is.
It worked, though.
There's something here that's going to happen. And, you know, he just kept persistent, like, listen, there's no clause here. We're not going to, it's not a, you know, a cult. We're not going to convert you.
A little bit.
And I, you know, I finally took the chance to go out because he said, hey, we're going to get all the 173rd guys you serve with, and we're going to get you guys all out on the Colorado River. And we went out, and no, they didn't try to convert us. And it was just one of the most amazing experiences of my life. You know, there's a lot of, you know, counseling's great. The VA does its thing, and it needs to happen. There's counseling that needs to happen. There's things that have to be worked out through those psychiatrists and psychologists and the way that you think and all this stuff like that. But, and there's counseling, group counseling inside of the VA even. But when you're out on the Colorado River and you're just hanging out and you're just going down the river and you're just able to be, just as you were in combat. And what I try to do in my personal life now, this is something that's happened because of Outward Bound, is I try to facilitate conversations that need to happen between veterans. And a lot of those conversations can't happen inside of clinical settings. They can't happen inside of a VA, inside of a white wall, like we're all sitting at a table and we're supposed to talk about the deepest, darkest things that happen to us, and it just doesn't happen. You can get close to it, but you're not going to get the connection that you need, that really the healing part of it. And so we were going down, so I went down the Colorado River with my best buddies, guys I serve with, and we're able to take care of each other, love each other, just like we did in combat, but we're not getting shot at. We're just there. We're just hanging out. And there's this one memory I have where I'm going down the Colorado River, and we did a night float. And I always, talk about how has this helped you? How has this affected your life? We went down on this night float, and now the water was it wasn't fast moving water, but it was fast enough if you got in trouble, if you weren't paying attention, and the guy so you had two guys up the whole time, and everyone else was sleeping. So all the rafts were stuck together in this big triangle, and we're all tied together, and we're going down the river, and it's pitch dark because you're in canyons. And you see all the stars. I mean, I saw stars in Afghanistan, that was pretty, but here on this Colorado River, you're going down, and all the stars, the stars that you see, they're so bright. There's not a light, 100, how many miles was it away from the nearest town? I can't even remember.
Well, it's 4 hours from Salt Lake City.
Yeah, it's 4 hours, right? So there's no lights at all. I mean, it's just pitch black, and you see every star, and you're in care with another guy to keep guys off the rocks. And there's a few memories in my life. I've had a lot of great memories. And that one's right up at the very top of the list because I'm caring for the guys I love. They're right below me, but we're not getting shot at. We're doing something really good. We're doing something that can build us up again. And that stuff it leaves a lasting impression. It changes your life. Those conversations that happened on that trip were amazing. I've gone on a few outward bound trips, so I can say that from a different experience, I've learned how to sail from outward bound, and now I own a sailboat. I'll be moving out on my sailboat this summer and living out there. I mean, it's impacted my entire life, outward bound, and in all the right ways. It didn't need to, it wasn't a forced thing. It wasn't, it was just what it needed to happen. And so that's what outward bound has done for me.
That is great. That's a great story. Thank you. So Jeremy, now to you, and I have to say I didn't have any trouble picking out who was the guy who participated in Heroes and Horses. So after serving as both an airman and a soldier, you didn't have enough, so you did both services. How did you manage to connect with Heroes and Horses? And tell us a little bit about your story and what you took away from that experience.
Well, I got to tell you, I was at work one day, and I was flipping through my phone because my job is incredibly stressful, and it's not like combat stress, it's just office busy stress. And I was flipping through my phone on a break, and I came across an article on Nat Geo Adventure about another Heroes and Horses graduate, Ray Nell, who was riding his horse and taking some of his other horses and all of his tack to donate to Heroes and Horses. And I'm reading through it, and I'm thinking about where I was in my life at that moment. I was struggling in my job. I was struggling at home. I was struggling with a lot of loss, and really struggling just to identify what I was supposed to be. And what caught my eye was that you spend time in the woods. And my wife can attest to the fact that any chance I get, I spend in the woods. Every September, I spend as much time as I can elk hunting and chasing elk in the mountains of New Mexico. And so when I saw that, and I saw that I could do this all on horseback, I was like, okay. I mean, what do I got to lose? I mean, I could apply. They don't ever call back, so I could apply for it. At least I gave it a shot. And about a year ago, sometime in March, I got a call from Mike Riley, and he said, "Hey, are you still interested in going to?" I said, "Say what?" You know, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and so I accepted a slot in Heroes and Horses, and I just knowing that I had to make a change in my life, something needed to happen. And I needed to do something because the road I was going down, it wasn't horrible. I had been in some pretty dark places. I'd been down some pretty rough roads, but where I was going and the road I was on, it just wasn't the right road, and I was struggling a lot just to figure out who I was. And so I arrived in Montana, and you talk about stress inoculation. I remember very vividly going into the lodge and sitting there and looking around, and there was a ton of people with their eyes on me, like all you guys now. And I stood up and I turned to someone, I don't even know who it was, and I asked them, "Is it always going to be like this?" And they were like, "Yeah." And they just walked off. I was like, okay. But I knew I couldn't go back. I knew I couldn't turn back. I took on something that they asked me to do, that I had applied to do, and they accepted me. And to quit wasn't even an option. Someone else missed out on this trip because I took a spot. And so there was no way I was going to back out of it. And it quickly went from there to a horse named Pam, who was just a huge motivating, coincidentally, the horse's owner's name was Pam. She's just an amazing lady, a great mentor. And it just, I could look back on the process. I could close my eyes right now, and if I was a good artist, I would paint a picture of specific moments within the phases that significantly impacted me. One was we're traveling down a trail, and the horse I am on, Waverly, great horse, great.
Donated.
Waverly, I'm riding Waverly, and I'm ponying. I'm dragging behind me another horse. This is the first time I could really drag a horse behind me or pony another animal behind me, because Waverly was such a challenge. Wanted to run to the front. He wouldn't stay where I needed him to be, and I ended up somehow, some way, looking up at almost a cliff face and looking down at a river below, and the horse I was ponying is now facing me in front of me on a trail this wide. And so I realized that, as veterans, we are, from day one, from the day where we get to basic training, we're given responsibility, and we're given the ability to make difficult decisions. And somehow, some way, I can't tell you, I blacked out, but I made it, and I made it back, and the horse was behind me eventually. But I think it was that time when I realized that, I'm not broken. There's nothing broken about me. I've been told a lot that I have problems, and that I need to overcome this, and that I need to do that. But what I never did was take into consideration what I felt and what I knew I could do. And so what that did for me was put me in a position where my mind started working again. The ability to think about how I'm going to move forward wasn't just based on how do I avoid situations that make me incredibly uncomfortable, like sitting on a stage in front of all these people. This never would have happened a year ago. I'm completely honest with you. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have shown up. To how do I move forward, and how do I do something positive other than just living my life, going to work every day, coming home, watching the news, and trying to appease my wife by telling her, yeah, we'll go on vacation. That was a big driving force. Was my wife is an amazing woman. She loves to travel. She wants to see the world, and I wanted to sit at home. I was terrified of leaving the house, and so being able to now take in thought, take on new thoughts, and think about the future, and have drive, not just think about the future, but have drive to pursue it, and have ideas, and return to a life of service was something that was just festering in a good way inside of me, and to the point where I decided that after all was said and done, after the third phase, I spent a month with a horse trainer, Val Geisler, in Wyoming as an apprentice. And I learned to train horses. I was given an amazing opportunity. He calls me son. He's just an amazing man, and gave me a lot. And instead of taking that and using it to provide myself with something, I decided to use that and provide others with something. And I saw a huge gap. You have people who donate horses like Waverly to a program with good intentions. They just want to help people. So here's a horse, he's a great horse. Yeah, well, Micah and Mike Riley and the folks at Heroes and Horses, they don't necessarily have the time to take on these horses and work with them. So I started my own nonprofit organization, Charlie 5 Incorporated. My sole mission is to take these horses that are being donated to equine assisted therapy programs and train them, take on the training aspect of them, and return them to the programs at no cost. I don't want any money for it. I don't want anything other than just to feel good about taking the gift that I was given, because it really is a gift, taking the gift of opportunity I was given and pay it forward and make it and give someone else another opportunity.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jeremy. Really cool. All right, now for the program administrators, the guys that run this. I got same real question for both of you. I'll start with Micah and then Chad. Maybe you could answer the question. Seems like both of your programs take combat vets that have been under incredible hardships, and then you put them into more hardship, whether that's in Montana or on whitewater rafting. Seems a little counterintuitive, but explain why that becomes therapy for these guys.
I think that pressure is the key component to growth in human beings. I think that it is the single one component that gives us a choice. Like, we can't decide, it's like a staircase, we can't decide what all those life experiences are made of, but we always have the ability to make the choice of whether it's going to lead us up and away or down and below. And I think that the greater the struggle, like I talked about, the greater the value. And so these guys think that, hey, these experiences they're told are breaking them down and ruining their life, and they're never going to be able to be functioning, contributing members to society ever again. And we put them in a situation that's so tough and so arduous, counter to what everybody else says you should do. Like, if they get any more stressed, they're going to snap like a breadstick. These guys actually begin to look to themselves, and for the first time in a very long time in their life, they begin to realize that they're the classroom and the student all at the same time. And the harder the experiences come, the harder they look in and the more that they learn about themselves. So it is counterintuitive, like totally, like 180 degrees from what everybody else is saying we should do. But no matter what the struggle is, it can always add value to your life. And I always say, like, I call it death by ease when I'm giving a much longer speech, and I would never put anyone under that type of situation. But I call it death by ease. The easy way will always kill you eventually. Like going to McDonald's every day, or for 5 years and taking a Lipitor, or like, waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, lifting weights and working out and eating healthy and being balanced. Like, the easy way, the escalators or the stairs, the easy way will always kill you. And a lot of guys are presented the easy way. So you come home from combat, the first person you see is a 25-year-old grad student that has a matrix that's going to prescribe you, Ambien and Valium and, whatever else just to get you started, get kind of quiet you down and we immediately begin to devalue these guys right off the bat. And they start to believe that I am sick, that I have a problem, that I need to become reliant on this, and that we make the struggle go away. But what they're really doing is devaluing the human being's experiences. So, I think you treat pressure with pressure. Like, when I chatted with you briefly today, I said, how do you get the bug off your windshield? I hate to simplify it like that, but that you hit at 60 miles an hour, do you pour a cup of water on it? Well, that could take a year. Or do you use a pressure washer and just get it out of there? And for me, you meet pressure with pressure. And
right.
Yeah.
So Chad, it sounds like a common theme. Both of you guys, your programs are hard. Do we resort too much to the easy solution when treating veterans? Drugs, pills, is that in your experience effective, or are you helping show another way?
Well, I hope we're helping show another way. I think, think about it this way. In my experience, we sometimes try and solve the last generation's problem in our generation. And I think veterans right now, if you go to the VA, you get a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress, and you get one of two treatments. You get prolonged exposure therapy, what's called cognitive processing treatment. And that's it. If you think about the human brain, it has 2 billion brain cells. That's a pretty simple way to look at the human brain, right? If anyone who's ever had a shoulder injury, we know a lot about a shoulder, but it's pretty hard to fix a broken one. And we're pretending that we can fix someone who's experienced trauma, experienced difficulties in transitioning by giving them 2 choices of treatment. And I think to just piggyback off what Mikey said, I think growth is always painful. If you're working out, build muscle, you got to suffer first. And the one thing that I would say very specifically, that one of the reasons I love veterans so much and working with this population is, we have some research that really talks about trying to get to the bottom of what was meaningful for veterans once they've left an expedition. What was it about this expedition that you attach meaning to? The largest single factor that veterans responded to, that veterans took meaning from, was suffering. Like, if the weather sucked, if they got lost and had to do an extra hard day or two, that's the thing that they really attach meaning to. You don't talk about the good times all the time. You talk about those times when life sucked and you got stuck in a storm. And that's something that, we've learned from veterans, is they want to be pushed. They don't want to be treated like children.
That's great. So I want to open up. I hope there's some questions in the audience. Right here. Should be on.
Is it on?
Yes.
I'm Michelle. I'm vice chair of the North Carolina Outward Bound School Board. I'm also a field instructor, and I've worked with veterans in the field, so I can attest to the transformational experiences that are had out there by me as well as the veterans, by the way. But one of the things that has come to my attention over the years, particularly from the students that I've had on course, is the challenges in recruiting students to our programs. And I know that was alluded to earlier, that veterans don't want a handout. They don't want to feel like they're going to be preached to. So I hope that you all can maybe address for us what some of those recruiting challenges have been, what's working, and how we're going to address the people who really can benefit from these programs.
Okay, you guys, Micah, how do you find your candidates? Do you have a strong pipeline?
No, we don't recruit. People apply to us. Last year we had 154 guys apply, and we took 16 guys. That's all we had the economics for, and I think maybe a portion of those, a third of them, potentially weren't eligible. I think you kind of like within the veteran space, I think you see a lot of like kind of vacation professional veterans. So they travel around, and they've been on 10 or 12 different trips. They've been bear hunting in Alaska, and then they're in, whatever, riding bicycles and doing unicycles. I mean, there's just crazy stuff that I see that there's for veterans. I mean, I want to ride a unicycle, and I would go. So if anyone's listening, invite me. But we honestly, we have guys apply from all across the country, and we don't necessarily recruit, and we screen really hard. We're asking and looking for a particular type of individual that through our process is, without them even knowing it, they're answering the questions in a way where we realize that they really want to help themselves, and that's our key candidate. I think as we grow and scale, I think there'll be that recruiting component, and we'll tie that into it.
So how does the word get out? Is it word of mouth? How do folks like Jeremy even find out about? How did you find out, Jeremy, about?
Well, I found out through Nat Geo Adventure. Ben Masters was writing a piece on a graduate, and I was. Okay, so I went to their website, and they were legit. You know what I mean? It wasn't, let's go take this poor veteran on a pony ride in the mountains. Let's challenge and drive these veterans to doing something, and it spoke to me. It just spoke to me. I said, I don't need to go to a ball game. I don't need to go. I need to find a way to positively affect change in my life. Right. And that's what spoke to me.
Great. Here you go.
I'm not a planted friend right there. And I served with the same unit on a different time. He was 173rd, I was 173rd.
Second and 503rd.
He was in Afghanistan and Iraq. I was in Vietnam. And I would expect nothing no more than you represent the 173rd. I was wounded in combat twice. Yeah, I didn't hear you when you got wounded, but we was in the same battalion, 2nd Bat, right?
Yep.
Same
battle company, though.
Yeah, that's right. You were battle company. But anyway, I guess your story sort of parallel mine, because when I got home, I had been working for a large manufacturing company, after getting wounded in combat. and going to the hospital and all this kind of stuff. I thought when I got back to reclaim my job, there would be no problem. Only to find out they said, we can't use you. So this sort of summed up what you happened that you say you couldn't get a job at Walmart. So I went through the same thing. Yeah. But I had something to fall back on. By going through combat and all that experience that I had earned in the 173rd, I had to reinvent myself, just like you guys. Reinvent yourself, get up, and go out and do something about it.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
So proud of you, man.
Great. Thank you.
Angie's got a question. Angie.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was on. Sorry. Okay, so when you come back from your, I don't want to call it an adventure because it's not, but your expedition, do you go through the same kind of, like, missing the people that you've spent all this time with? Is it kind of the same feelings, or you know what I mean?
Well, I think my experience was a bit different than Brendan's. Brendan went with the guys he had served with. I went with guys that I had never seen before in my life. The cool thing was we all had shared there was a common thread there. We all served in combat at one time or another in the same theaters. And if you watch, there's a video that was done, that was shot while we were going through the first phase. And one of the volunteers says, you know, once they realize that you're military, it makes it real easy to get to know them and for them to open up. Because being a veteran, it's like a fraternity, it's a brotherhood. It makes it a lot easier. So I miss the guys. I still keep in touch with them.
I was going to ask, do you keep in touch?
I still keep in touch with them. And the amazing thing is we're all doing something. One guy went on, he went to go work for Google. And another guy now is making, in his spare time, just for fun, he's making spurs and stuff like that, which is really incredible. So we're all doing something. And so, yeah, I still talk to him. I still reach out to him every once in a while and keep in touch.
Yeah, for me, it's, you know, I think it was the most reassuring thing was that we were all doing okay. We got through the course, and it was, you know, that friendship was always there, and we hadn't seen each other at that point, or five or six, maybe 7 years. At that point, we hadn't seen each other, and guys were killing themselves. There was guys getting locked up. There was a lot of turmoil that was happening with our unit, and so to go out on the course and went on the course together, it was like a positive affirmation, like everyone's all right. You guys are good. I'm good, and that was really healing. That's a good thing to know that you guys are there. And yeah, I miss them every day, but you know, Facebook is a crazy thing. And sometimes I don't miss them at all because they're in my face all the time. But you know, but it was a reaffirming thing to have those, hey, we're good. And if you ever need me, I'm here. We had this one guy, we had a medic, Doc Old, and you know, he was my medic after one of our medics was killed in Afghanistan, Restrepo. Doc Restrepo was a highly loved guy, and Doc Old came after him. Now, Doc Old is stoic, and he went out on the Outward Bound trip with us, and he's a very stoic guy. He was the only medic that had a 203 attached to his M4. It's like, Doc, you're not supposed to be shooting grenades. You're supposed to be taking care of people. And just a really cool guy, though. And so a lot of guys came to him throughout the deployment. And you know, where do you go when you're having a really hard time? You go to your medic, because your medic is there to take care of you in all ways. And we went on this Outward Bound trip, and at the end, at the last night, we were sitting there, and he said, you know, O'Byrne, I gotta tell you something. He said, for the entire deployment, I had no one to talk to. I had no one. All the guys came to me, and I needed someone to talk to, and I couldn't talk to anyone because I was Doc, and I needed to be stoic for everybody. And he needed to say that for 7 years. He needed to say that for 7 years, and it took him an outward bound trip for him to finally be able to say that to me. Now, you know, he's a nurse now. He's taking care of people, and he's going to keep on taking care of people throughout his life. And the one other thing that he said was, one of the things I missed the most about everything is that, you know, I took care of you. I took care of you guys. And there's this great picture that Chad has of him bandaging my foot. I think I was walking on without sandals.
Yeah, that was against safety policy.
Yeah, I bumped my toe and I cut my toe.
True story.
And he's bandaging me up and stuff like that. And it's just, you know, it's nothing like combat. It's not, you know, it's not a bullet wound, but you know, it's the same love that's going into it. And you know, even as something as silly as a bandaged toe, he was still taking care of us. And you know, those things need to happen away from combat, and they can't happen at the VA. They have to happen on things like, you know, Micah's and Chad's programs.
That's great. John, how am I doing on time? One more? Do we have time for one more? Or are you giving me the hook? No. Oh, we do? Okay. Sir in the back.
First of all, God bless you for what you do for the vets, Mike and Chad. I have a West Point niece, graduated 2008, in Iraq, come to Afghanistan, come to Korea. Do you have a program? She needs help. Do you have a program for women?
Yes, sir. I mean, our programs they're all co-ed, I guess, for lack of a better word. The breakout is really, it mirrors that of the military, which is generally right around 20% women, 80% men. We're slightly higher than that. But we do also offer expeditions that 1 or 2 a year that are women only, recognizing that they might have some unique needs that they'd rather go with a group of women. So we definitely do.
Ma'am?
Your mission is incredibly inspiring. And what can all of us who feel that do for you going forward?
That's a great question.
Don't be afraid to ask for the clothes.
Well,
T-shirts.
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
Well, I'll start, I guess. You know, they're not free.
Yeah.
Someone has to pay, obviously, and that's something that is incredibly valuable. I think also being an advocate, not only for our organizations, but for the people that we serve. I think we help veterans by understanding what their needs are. And this group of people taking a positive image of veterans home with them and speaking to veterans' strength as opposed to veterans' weakness or perceived weakness or victimhood, I think is something that's incredibly valuable. And if you know veterans, send them our way. We're always looking for folks to come out.
You got anything to add to that, Micah?
Yeah, I think, of course, like I said earlier on, you know, the economic piece is tremendous. And I think, you know, for organizations like Outward Bound and Heroes and Horses, you know, we're kind of in a sea of a lot of people that are, you know, in America's longest conflict are out here saying, hey, we're like doing something different. We're like actually helping and trying to inspire change. And sometimes it makes it really difficult to survive in that environment. That's why our hashtag is actually not a vacation, which was good because people started like thinking like, who are these people? Because you know we don't think it's vacation that transforms your life. And so, yeah, I think like supporting organizations that are results driven, that you know have quantifiable data, quantitative data, and are actually become invested in what you invest into. Like, ask the questions like, what are you actually doing? Like, what are the results you're producing? Like, and be more involved, you know, from an economic standpoint and from, you know, I guess you could say an emotional standpoint.
If you guys had more access to resources, how much could you scale? I mean, how many did you say you put through in a year? Was it six?
Right now, between 400 and 600 typically.
So if in an ideal world, if that wasn't a a pinch point, how many could you serve? Are you at max capacity right now?
We peaked at 1,500 veterans in 2010. It takes a little bit of time to get back there, just in terms of staffing, but yeah, we could do 1,500 a year probably pretty easily.
Okay. How about you, Michael? What would, if you could scale? How much can you scale?
For me, I will only scale to the point that I can actually fundamentally be involved in the transformation of a guy's life. Like, it's not, I don't want to do like the cookie cutter, just bust them out. Like, I want to go deep into the individual and have that guy move on and become a functioning, contributing member to his family and society. So I would say, like, I would grow it in a very measured and balanced way, but next year we want to do 32 guys and then just keep adding trips from there as the resources allow us.
Okay. Anybody else?
Thank you. Thank you for your service, all of you, and for what you're doing. My name's Hunter Hill. I'm a combat vet myself, and I'm really honored to serve in the state senate here, where I chair Veterans, Military, and Homeland Security. And one of my concerns is the issue of money. I mean, you mentioned you had 119 folks sign up, and I appreciate your diligence in wanting to take care of each one. But as somebody who's cares about all the veterans in the state and in the country, and y'all's, of course, is a national program, what can we do at the state level or federal level? Because y'all's program so resonates with me as a combat vet that our politicians generally coddle veterans and make excuses for them and, you know, victimize them. And I love what y'all are doing because you revitalize their lives. And my question is simply is, how can we at the state level put more money into these programs and invest actual tax dollars, because that's what we should be doing. I think we should, I mean, obviously Mr. Blank is very generous and many others are, but we need to be putting our resources behind you. And so how much cost per head is the program, and how can we help at least Georgians, since we're state level, get scholarships to these programs? Sure. Thank you.
I think one of the issues that you see with like governmental organizations is that there's a lot of money flowing through there, and money isn't always the answer. It's like I said, it's a process issue. I think it needs to be like more focused, and I think there needs to be a bridge for guys that get off of active duty, and before they see the 25-year-old grad student that immediately prescribes them medication and puts them on a psychotherapy regimen, give them the opportunity to come down from that high pressure to low pressure experience, because that's what it is. Like, I mean, my wife will tell you, like, get off the airplane 2 days before, you're like shooting it out for your life, and then like I arrive and I'm home and I'm like, is there anything to eat in the fridge? I mean, it's that intense. It's so polarizing that experience can kill you. Yeah. It's that polarizing. It can kill you. It is so intense. So rather than saying, hey, I'm going to take you from super high intensity, and then you're going to go into a room and there's a girl sitting there, or a guy sitting there, and he's like, hi, how do you feel? And you're like, oh, I don't know, not good. Not good? You're like, oh, I mean, okay or not good? You're like, okay and not good. And
how much are you drinking?
And then you're like, oh, what are you writing on there? And you start freaking out. And I mean, that's just the reality of what we see. So like, create a bridge program, identify like functioning, results-driven organizations, and shift money and change the narrative that veterans are victims, that these guys are sick and disabled, shrink down that money that's being spread out to lots of ineffective organizations, and get behind programs like Outward Bound for Veterans and Heroes and Horses, and help us grow organically.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, I think there is a need, and it's really encouraging for me to see this generation of veterans move into politics. There's a need for people to better understand what that experience is like for veterans. Now money is channeled to the VA, and the VA obviously is an invaluable resource for veterans with both medical health, like physical health issues, but also psychological issues. But there are a lot of organizations out there that are doing really great work that aren't traditional therapy, and they're not they don't fall into a really nice cookie cutter approach. And having folks like you that can advocate for programs that maybe look a little bit different and feel a little bit different is invaluable.
I think we have time for one more. Anybody? Yes, sir.
Both of you are obviously men of vision, otherwise you wouldn't be here and wouldn't be doing a great job that you are. I would love to hear each of yours vision going forward.
Oh boy. Vision going forward.
I can tell a quick joke.
A joke would be great. You know, I mean, for me, I want to be, or I want Outward Bound to be the conduit that helps veterans rediscover who they are and drive veterans to be leaders in their homes, in their communities, in this country, just by re-energizing them and reminding them who they are. I mean, that's pretty simple. That's all I want to do, and that's all I want our program to do.
Excellent.
We have been really successful at taking citizens and making them soldiers, and we've been fundamentally failing as a nation of taking those soldiers and help making them citizens again. I want to continue to expand to a broader range of individuals and create a bridge from the guy that gets off active duty to put him through a process so that he doesn't encounter the 2 years down the road where 60% of veterans experience signs of PTSD. It's 2 years down the road. That's when the guys really start having a lot of major problems. So create a streamlined approach for these guys to come down from those high intensity situations and circumstances that have really polarized them in their life. So.
Okay, absolutely.
I've heard bridge a couple times, more than a couple times, from the VA to what you're doing. And I know Michael really well. How do we create that bridge between the VA, the federal government, and what's been going on and what you're trying to accomplish? Do you have a vision for that?
I think organizations need to get in front of the Health and Human Services Committee. They need to compile data, and they need to get in front of policymakers. And you need to take a hard look at the system and say, hey, it's broken. Okay, 110,000 guys have killed themselves since 9/11. 22 veterans are killing themselves every day. There's billions of dollars being spent, and it's not working. So, let's get a different shovel, and let's figure out how to get to the bottom of it. Because otherwise, we become the self-licking lollipop. We just exist to exist. And if you want change, it takes conviction to see that through, and it takes innovation. And combat's not going away, ever. There's always going to be the kid on the playground that's going to beat up the other kid and take his Dunkaroos. They were huge in the 90s, by the way. And delicious. But really, you need to take a hard look at the system, and that's some people taking ownership. And that's where the bridge, that's where that first block gets laid. And without that, we'll be having this conversation 10 years later, but with different people.
Okay. Well, folks, we're running short on time. It takes special people to serve, and it's even more special for people that serve those who have served, and that's what every one of you are doing. So let's give these guys a great round of applause.
We can stand up.